So welcome, folks. Great to see a lot of familiar faces and new faces here. I'm Hugh Doyle, and I'm the CEO of Easy Benefits. I'm here with my colleague, John, who is, I won't pronounce his last name because I'll mess it up too. But John is our head of benefits and retirement. And today we're going to talk about smarter plans, better outcomes. So look at applying data and leveraging AI to modernize your benefits and retirement strategy. So we're going to touch on labor trends, data and AI, and then we're going to run into a quick case study before we finish up. John, over to you.
Very quickly, John Orodnik, Head of Benefits and Retirements here at Easy Benefits. Really appreciate you all making the time today for the conversation. Before we kind of get into how we've leveraged data and AI to drive some of the curated benefit strategies, want to unpack a little bit more around the labor trends and the workforce trends that we're seeing within Canada. So just kind of kicking it off for us, Canada as a demographic is aging faster than ever. Some data for you from 2020 to 2025. You will see significant growth in the 70 to 79 age bracket with the 22% growth over the last 5 years. Similarly, the age 60 to 69 and 30 to 39 also are seeing significant growth. On the opposite side, the 50 to 59 segment actually saw a reduction from a population perspective, likely as individuals are aging into that older age bracket. And then unfortunately, on the opposite side, we're seeing that the younger population growth has remained modest, particularly in the under age 20 cohort. So what does that mean? Really, it means that the population's getting older and living longer. So how does that translate into the workforce? Well, as we know, cost of living has become more and more prominent in today's society. We're seeing in that older demographic now, the 65 plus, ever since the adoption of hybrid work, we've seen a significant uptake in what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. 21% of individuals over the age of 65 actually reported working some type of hybrid remote work in the year 2024. So you'll see we've seen a massive significant growth in that area because these individuals are needing to work longer. How are we combating that shortfall? Well, we see it in the news all the time. Immigration continues to be the major stopgap for our labor shortage. You'll see, although reduced, our immigration target for the next 3 years is still close to 1 million people. So it really is continuing to be that driver as we have more and more people exiting the workforce. How are we going to supplement that incoming generation to continue to have a steady economy? Speaking of the economy, the gig economy. So that has ballooned the last several years. 23 to 28% of Canadians are now involved in the gig economy or some type of short-term work. You'll see that's up from 12% or 13% in 2022. Massive shift. People are having to work more, and people are needing to rely on multiple forms of income to really survive in today's economy. Just to back that up, over 35% of Canadians are now reporting that they now have to hold multiple jobs. That makes Canada the highest polyemployment market in the globally developed nations. And so where does that all come in? Well, I think when we look at the cost of living, what does that look like? Well, just some quick stats for you. On average, for a single person living in Canada, the average cost is anywhere between $3,300 and $3,800 a month. And you'll look how quickly that cost balloons up for a family of 4, where you're now looking at, on average, $6,000 a month. The cost of living is ballooning. The workforce is now needing to stay working longer to support the cost of living. So, what are employers doing? Well, as we mentioned at the start, there's a shifting workforce. So 5 generations of employees are now actively employed in the workforce to date. And as a result, 76% of HR teams are now looking at employee experience as the top priority. Having those people work for you is now more important than ever with that incoming labor shortage. Knowing you have good people, we've seen CEOs are actually reporting that close to 74% of people are now looking to upskill their workforce. So you've got the good people in the door already. Let's focus on keeping those people for a long time and being a part of our team longer. And then what does that training look like? Well, we heard about it a little bit earlier today. Management training particularly, looking at supporting a hybrid work environment, looking at supporting mental health, employee well-being, and as we see and we'll talk on later, AI adoption. So when we look at how does this all tie into benefits and retirement, well, I think we hit on the point at the start where you'll see we've got an economic uncertainty amongst employees and employers to date that's at an all-time high. 58% of the workforce has reported that the financial stress that they're living on a week-to-week basis is negatively impacting their day-to-day functions at work. Understanding that salary budgets are finite, where do employers look? Well, quite often than not, benefits, retirement becomes that next line item. And so when they're looking at things, more than 50% of employers are now looking this upcoming year to update and modernize their benefits workforce to adapt to the needs of the multi-generational population that they now have today. I'm going to pass it back to my colleague Hugh now, who's got a couple of questions for you.
Okay, so needless to say, you can now see that I leave the hard speaking engagement to John and I bring up a QR code. So we're going to ask you to join in here. So we're going to just take out your phone, scan the QR code, and we're going to get you to answer a couple of questions. So we're going to look at a few different cohorts. But ultimately, you're going to answer which two benefits would each generation value the most. So we got Gen Z, that's age 14 to 29, millennials, age 30 to 45, and Gen X, age 46 to 61. So we'll hopefully see it live. Give it a moment. Okay, so you can start to see the results coming in. We've got the one thing we want you to take away from these slides is that different demographics, different needs, we're all obviously guessing what they'd want here, but work-life balance, flexible schedules, remote work, and additional vacation, then lifestyle and personal well-being, and that's followed by career development, and so on. Age 30 to 45, work-life balance, so flex schedules, family and caregiving support. Hopefully it doesn't change on me too much now. Yeah, so you can see the top two there, work-life balance and family and caregiving support. And then on Gen X, we'll give you a moment here. Yeah, so here we're seeing retirement and financial security. So a lot of retirement planning, RSP, pension plans. And then interestingly, that's followed by traditional benefits. So that's for age 46 to 61. So what do we learn from that? Every workforce is unique. And each part of that workforce required their own unique set of benefits. Back to you, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Hugh hit on there, you'll see it's a little bit of a moving target based on the population. And so as we kind of unpack that a little bit further, how can we tie it all in today with the data that we have and leveraging AI and the capacity that we have from that side to really give us an enhanced insight to our organizations on a day-to-day basis? So before we start with that, I wanted to get into why understanding your workforce is actually important. I want to talk about the fact that you could have a 200-person engineering organization and another 200-person engineering organization. On paper, they may look the same. They may be doing the same lines of work. As we saw earlier in one of the presentations, I think 91% of organizations are going to look to benchmark their data this year. Benchmarking needs to extend outside of just what are my competitors doing. It needs to get into understanding the people that are showing up to work for you on Monday morning. They're the ones that are really coming in, they're showing the work, they're doing the job, and you are going to have diverse needs as an organization. And by understanding the workforce that shows up on Monday morning, you're able to really curate a benefit strategy on retention, diversity, and recruitment. More importantly, finance is always happy to see when we've got an opportunity to maximize ROI. You're able to come back to them with a detailed business idea and why you're backing up the information and the recommendations that you're making. And lastly, most importantly, I can confidently tell you that when you're doing a curated benefit strategy, something that's really focused on your employees, meeting the needs of what they are as an organization, you're really going to see enhanced engagement, and you're now delivering a total reward strategy that reflects the people that show up to work for you. When we leverage data and AI, it's really important to note that we've always had this data before. I think the important part to note is that with AI, we can now pick it apart and analyze it a lot faster. We're able to look at things like the workforce data, so the employee demographics, gender, average age, male, female, single family, all of those pieces can be broken down. You can see employee engagement, and you can also look at your utilization trends. You're able to look at unpack things on benefits programs like how many people have maxed out certain benefits. Do you know how many people have maxed out your mental health practitioners the last year? That data is available, and so when you can look at really curating a strategy around that and seeing what's important, you're able to deliver a lot more value to your teams. You're able to identify trends across your generations, different departments, and diverse employee groups as well too. You can predict your turnover, support on workforce planning challenge, and also see how much of your workforce is actually planning towards retirement. We had an organization where we unpacked it for them, and 25% of their workforce were set to retire in the next 3 years. They had no plan for that whatsoever. You can also then go and personalize your benefits and communications. I'll talk about that in a moment here as well too, to really curate the benefits needs. One size fits all isn't working, and you're really able to measure the ROI on benefits through the data and analytics that we have. You can drive wellness and engagement initiatives using real-time data as well too. So all of it together, you're able to do smarter decision-making, drive an employee experience, and build a benefit strategy that doesn't just reflect the assumptions, but rather your actual workforce on a day-to-day basis. When we look at, we've done one example here for you. This is just one of many, many, many ways that you can break up your employee data. This is a sample for you right here where we broke up the employee cohorts into early career professionals, mid-career professionals, and the established professional or the pre-retiree. Just even in this small segment of data, by establishing these 3 separate cohorts here, you can see, as Hugh highlighted in his presentation earlier today, each and every one of them have a diverse and different need. The early career employee is likely paying down debt. The thought of a first-time home may be in the debt distance, but something that's on their mind. The mid-career professional, maybe they're going through fertility navigation, planning for that. And then maybe that pre-retiree is now thinking, well, what does the next 5 years look like for me? How am I going to retire and phase out of the workforce? And what does the next chapter look like? Before I pass it back to Hugh for a case study, just a couple of final thoughts for me to leave you with. But 84% of employers have now said that benefits are critical to attracting and retaining talent. So really being able to drive a personalized solution that reflects the accurate needs of your organization is becoming more important now than ever. And when I talk about benefit strategy, you can have the best benefits program in the world, but if you're not communicating it well or you're not communicating to that cohort that you have that shows up, you're going to be missing the mark. And so when you personalize benefit communication, and just an example, someone in the Gen X, they're not going to want to be communicated the same way as a Gen Z. So think about that when you're being strategic with your approach. But through a curated communication strategy as well, you can create your employees to be more engaged, more informed, and have a more connected workforce. I'm going to pass it back to you, Hugh, for a case study that we did for them here.
Yeah, thanks, John. So great to get into some live case studies that we've lived through with our clients. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a real organization. You can tell by the picture, this organization's unique in terms of they need to go into work every day. So that's somewhat unique in the environment we're in today. So they're in a lab. I'm going to say 85% plus of the organization needs to be in every day. The lab was located, or is still located, in the downtown core of Toronto. And the company wanted to roll out a group retirement strategy. So, pretty standard. So we dug in, and we're going to get to that now. So what we did, we looked at the employee data. So not just the data that you might send to your broker normally, but things like postal codes, So what does postal codes tell us? In this case, the postal codes are able to tell us where people lived. We're looking at that most employees lived and commuted over 45 minutes a day into work. So that's a pretty big stress. Plus, we were able to tell that then they're paying for things like public transit by looking at just that piece of data, which is their postal code. We're also able to look at their dependent status. So a lot of these people had young families. They had dependents. So things like childcare, high on their radar, something that maybe we wouldn't have looked at in the past. Okay, so the solution. We recommended a flex option with the retirement plan. So something completely different than they were rolling out originally. This company was very go forward, wanted to do something that was good for their employees, but we were able to use that data and then recommend that they give a flexible solution so people didn't have to put it into the retirement plan. Members basically had the flexibility to use it for things like public transit, childcare, and I believe we let them use it for gym memberships as well. The result, which was super interesting, over 70% used it for things like public transit and childcare. So that's a really different outcome than was maybe going to happen with the group retirement solution. Overall, the employees were more satisfied with their benefits. They thought it was a better offering. It cost the company the very same. In fact, it actually may have cost the company less, just because usage isn't 100% on those programs. So we feel strongly that the result was better for employees, better for employer by giving this choice and by looking at data. Okay, key takeaways. Workforce and employee expectations are changing fast. Data and AI can help you better understand your workforce needs. Tailoring your benefit strategy to high engagements, leads to high engagements and retention, and ROI. And lastly, we've preached this for years, but I think it's more important than ever. We still don't see it. Flexibility is the future of benefits and retirement planning. So thank you. We're going to give you a bit of time back. We're going to take some questions and answers if you have any. Thank you.
As a safety manager, I cannot condone running in a space like this. My question is more around trends in the insurance industry in general. I guess what I'm wondering is, do you hear any murmurings from benefit carriers to adjust their insurance policies to account for the aging population? In a situation where we see people working beyond the age of 65 in increasing amounts, and given that a lot of insurance policies for specific benefits cut off at either age 65 or 70, what does that trend look like? I mean, if there's any movement at all, given that that is the time in a person's life where they're more likely to use those services. So I think from an insurance perspective, that's expensive for them, right? Just wondering if there's any murmurings you're hearing.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll take the first part, and then maybe I'll pass it over to you. First of all, I'm not a fan of the insurance companies often, so I'll put that out there. Yeah, so to answer that, yes, we're seeing an increase of the standard was age 65, benefits ends. We're definitely seeing that insurance companies are extending that age. And the other thing that's I've noticed a trend in is a retiree class. So companies continuing benefits for employees after they've left. So they're offering a retiree class because it's increasingly hard for those employees that have left the workforce to get things like travel coverage. It might be dental benefits, but I would say the trend is actually positive coming from the insurance companies there. I don't know if you've...
I mean, I think, to be honest with you, a lot of it comes from your consultant partner, to be honest with you. Like, I would say most of our benefit programs now do cover at age retirement for starting with health and dental. I mean, there is portions with the government that does pick up some coverages, but health and dental 100% are all being covered to retirement. I think what's also important to note is your life insurance. Again, those we're seeing covered longer. The biggest pain point, I think, is obviously long-term disability. Long-term disability for as 15, 20, as long as we can go back, has been to age 65. We are seeing insurance companies start to shift to 70. Now, as you can imagine, the risk, there's always a price associated with it, but there is more openness in moving that age a little bit further along. But I would say to kind of summarize your point there, 90 to 95% of plans, we are able to kind of push that retirement age significantly further now, and your partners should be recommending that to you as well. I do just want to add just one other unique thing that's going on is there is a lot of technology available today where I think a lot of plan sponsors are always used to, hey, we've got all our benefits with one of these said providers. There's now technology today that exists where you can actually sit between the insurance company and your payroll and HRIS platform. So what ends up happening is that platform can actually now administer multiple benefit platforms and multiple benefit carriers. So to your point earlier about different coverages, we've got some where hey, they'll cover you with Canada Life to retirement, but we've got specialty plans that'll go to 75 or 70 on long-term disability. I know you're probably thinking, sounds like a nightmare. To be quite honest with you, with the platform, it becomes a white label experience for you as an organization. So talking about employee experience, that employee logs into the system, they see it branded to their organization, they've got the multiple providers for them, and that we're really able to dive in on that curated approach for them to really meet the needs of the organization. And so what ends up happening is you can layer on multiple pieces, as we talked about the benefits stack earlier. Well, how do we pull it all together? Well, there's technology now to really streamline that whole experience and fit the piece to have a one central hub for all of that communication, and really also streamline the experience for your team, and also take a lot of workload off from you as the HR team as well, to be quite honest with you.
I just wanted to ask about the paper tax around all of this, and on the employee side specifically, and just coordinating benefits with spouses and such. Are there any like advances? I mean, I understand why insurance companies wouldn't want to make that easier, but are there workarounds happening? Is there any movement there, considering there's progress other places?
So if you're with the same insurance company, they like to make it easier for you. But if they don't, they don't like paying each other's claims. So they usually like to make it a little more tricky if they can. With a lot of the platforms now, it has become a lot easier to just download the explanation of benefits and just upload it to your providers. There are also ways now, especially with healthcare spending accounts, where that can become a lot more seamless now. Unfortunately, we just finally moved out of the age where you don't need a paper beneficiary form. So I'd say we're still a few years away from being able to coordinate benefits seamlessly like that.
Yeah, great presentation. I have a question about, since you review a lot of people's current plans, what are you seeing in terms of what companies generally overinvest in, right, and underinvest in when you see what their current coverage is?
Overinvest in and underinvest? That's a good question. Of course you'd ask that, Susie.
I'd say for me, what I notice is there's a lot of, it's always been done this way, and so this is how we want to keep going. I think if there's not a forward-thinking strategy around it, I think, if we look at things like mental health, I mean, that's an easy one to pick on, but you'd be surprised how many programs we walk into where it's still only $300 or $500 in mental health. Well, what does that cover you? One session, maybe two?
I think just to add to that, on the mental health topic, companies are investing in it, but I think what they're not doing is tracking utilization. So things like EAP programs, we're really proud that we've got, I think, almost all of our EAP programs usage over 10% at this stage, which is still incredibly low if you think about what it should be, but it's way ahead of the industry. So I think when we talk about investing, we're often thinking about monetary value, but I think we need to shift that a little bit too. We're paying for things as companies, everyone in the room here, you're paying X amount for an EAP program, and our employees aren't using it enough. So where I see, I guess, an underinvestment, for want of a better word, is like the actual education to the employees to make sure they're able to get out and use these products that you're already paying for. I would say that's the biggest fault I see.
Yeah, I'd say to your point then, yeah, the underinvesting is the communication. Is how are you actually communicating to your team? And it's really, as I chatted earlier, having that curated delivery. We had one company where the majority of their population was Gen Z. Their HR team made TikTok videos about how to use their benefits. So very different. I don't think that's going to land well with the Gen X. They probably wouldn't even know how to open up TikTok, to be honest with you, in a lot of cases. Sorry if I offended anyone here, but that's really just an example of some of the things that we're seeing. And to that point, Susie, it's the personalization. And I think the same way, one thing that we're seeing a lot is if you look at pension and retirement, it was always defined benefit. When you retired, you knew how much you were going to get. That wasn't sustainable either for businesses. And so, similar to the way that pension and retirement has shifted from defined benefit to defined contribution, we are seeing that a lot in the benefit space as well too, where organizations are coming up with a set dollar amount, whether it's single couple family or different cohorts of employees. And with that, they're then bringing a multitude of options to their employees. So some employees, and I'll give an example. We deal quite a lot with businesses in Ottawa where a lot of their spouses have government programs, which are quite simply better than their private employer is offering. And so what companies can do is they now have a buyer down option where they can use those extra dollars for flexible dollars, whether that's a health spending account to fund their kids' braces or a wellness account because they want to go golfing or mountain biking. It's become very flexible, but as an employer, you're still working with that same fixed budget, which becomes an easy communication to the finance side because we know exactly what we're spending based on our workforce as well too. Awesome.
Making our lives too easy here. Down there.
So I work for a public utility and we have the defined contribution plan that you're talking about. And I'm noticing that newer employees come into the organization, that's not something that they are interested in. And knowing that the workforce coming behind is also not staying long term, it's even less attractive to them. So do you have any thoughts or, because, and of course the people that have been long term, myself and selfishly, of course we want people to continue to contribute to that plan so that we have a good retirement option at the end. Wondering if there's any thoughts or solutions or outside of the box thinking around what we could do about that.
So just so I'm clear on that, that's a defined benefit pension plan right now you have?
Well, yes, exactly.
Defined contribution right now.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, do you want to go or I?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on the DB side if you want.
No, I mean, I was going to say on the defined contribution side, I mean, you're still working with that fixed dollar amount. And again, people now more than ever are worried about retirement. I think what we're seeing on the retirement side is a lot of people had their parents where they had the DB pension plan, and now they're seeing their parents start to retire and they haven't saved enough money for retirement. So retirement saving has now become one of the biggest trends that we're seeing within the business. But to your point, you've got younger people joining the workforce. They're looking to save and maximize as much money elsewhere. A lot of group retirement vendors have now offered, so here's a couple things for an FHSA account. So where there is the opportunity to do a match on FHSA account. There's also alternatives where there's student loan repayment programs. So you can offer, again, still working around that defined bucket of money, but you now have a multitude of options that you could present to them that are meeting your needs as somebody who wants to save for retirement. But then the individual who just graduated school, for example, who has student debt may want to be using it elsewhere on that side as well.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is you probably have more flexibility on those plans than you actually think. The insurance industry, the brokerage industry, obviously it's better for them if the money always stays in, but I think there's more flexibility there if you ask and you kind of push it be it with the insurance company or the broker if people need to access the money. And I think educating people around that is important as well, right? It's younger people often think, hey, my money's in there, I absolutely can't get it. That's not true. You can, and I think just letting them know that can lead to a lot more satisfaction than, hey, I'm not able to get this money. This is just for my retirement. There's massive stress about paying down debt, first time home. So I think just letting them know that there's more options, then and our industry needs to take a bit of responsibility on that than they believe is available. I think that's a big plus. Yep.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There is an assumption out there that flexible benefit is more expensive than the traditional benefit. What will be the business case of flexible benefits to a cost-sensitive organization? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'll pass it over to John in a sec, but I think the insurance companies would say that. We certainly would not say that. So when you create flexibility, you're often taking money that the insurance companies have in an insured product that has all different financial factors built in there. I'm just going to pick trend and inflation. Well, you don't build trend and inflation necessarily in on your flex dollars. So when your insurance companies are underwriting your plan, a traditional plan that doesn't have that level of flexibility, there's a lot more experience goes into the underwriting of it than non-flex. So I'll just use this example as health spending account dollars. So we hear it all the time. Oh, I was told it's too expensive. I was told. The reality of it is the insurance companies don't really want to give that flexibility, especially for mid and smaller. But we argue the opposite all the time, and we tend to when we run our analysis, we back it up all the time as well. I mean, more your area of expertise than mine for sure.
Yeah, I mean, before I jump on, I mean, just as a perfect example, companies that or employees that move to the health spending account side, I mean, and I'll get into the defined contribution model in a moment, but just for perspective, a health spending account's defined contribution, most plans in the healthcare spending account space is between 50 to 60% utilization. On your traditional benefit spend, it's usually between 80 and 90. So right out of the gate there's about a 25 to 30% delta in the total spend. But then from a business and a finance perspective, where the flexibility comes in is moving to that defined contribution mindset, and I think that's what some businesses struggle with, is looking at, oh, we always paid 80% of the premium. Well, now instead of 80% of the premium, you're paying $2,000 per employee per year. That employee, what they want to do, if they want to go for the plan that's $3,000 a year, well, now they have to spend that difference. Your cost isn't changing. And on the opposite side, and maybe they go for the lower plan, well, your cost still isn't changing, but you're seeing the lower utilization on the opposite side with the flexibility too. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think we have time for one more question if anyone else has anything. They can be.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering about employees making poor decisions. Like if they,
Right.
if you're 25 and you don't think that matters, you're not thinking about your, like
Right.
how do you work through that? I always thought about the healthcare savings, but I didn't really realize that the retirement was optional. And
Yeah, I'll just use a 5% match, $100,000 salary for just simple math. So $5,000 a year. It's very rare that we would, in fact, never. But they may give a portion of flexibility to it. So they may say up to 1,200 is flexible. But there is pretty strict capital accumulation plan compliance around even RSP, DPSPs that honestly 99% of people we talk to aren't aware of. So what you hit on there should be covered off by the broker/consultant in terms of compliance to not allow that to happen. So in our case study where we talked about the flexibility there, it wasn't that you could take in this case, I think it was 6%, but you couldn't take the 6% and just go spend it on public transit. Yeah, they were high. They were what we would call upper income, I guess. So yeah, it was. I think it was capped at like $1,400, but you would never say, hey, take the whole.
Yeah, it's the guardrails and having the guidance around that versus like we've seen organizations where we've come in and it's just
you're not
chaos.
You're not.
Yeah.
What you just said is you're not compliant. You're right. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Anytime we
thanks,
can get
folks.
30 minutes to chat benefits, it's greatly appreciated.
Appreciate it.